Hi, my name's Niki. This is The Interventionalist, and today I want to talk about pleasure and the importance of pleasure and experiencing pleasure, particularly somatic pleasure, but also just regulation, regulation, emotional regulation, but the regulation of your nervous system to not be in fight or flight all the time, for your body to feel regulated. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because, so I've been reading a lot about the concept of pleasure and like eroticism and consent and all of these different things that are like related to the experience of physical pleasure. And at the same time that I've been reading it all, my life has been changing like very weirdly, very rapidly. And I've experienced for the first time in my life, maybe ever, a feeling of somatic peace. Like my body feels at peace in a way that it literally never has. And I don't even think I realized that it never had until it started to. And in a video I posted 2 videos ago about, it's like called My Greatest Act of Self-Love with Self-Destruction, I talk about how I, for a long time, like abandoned myself sort of in the hopes of finding love, like forego all my boundaries in the hopes of finding love, because that was the only way I thought that I could find it, even though I was searching for something better. And it's a paradox because yes, I was abandoning myself, so I was like hurting myself in the process. I truly thought it's because I was doing something better and something right by abandoning myself. But because I had never sort of experienced genuine peace and reciprocity and like really warm, kind love in my life, I didn't understand that it felt differently than that. Like for me, that was my normal, that was my neutral, that's what I kept seeking out in some variation or another. But I think the interesting thing is like, you know, something's wrong, like it shouldn't feel this way, but it's also the only reference point you have for what love or care or peace or pleasure should feel like. And so you keep seeking it out and it keeps not going right because it's not meant to go right, because you're not meant to be in a state of distress and in pain when you're in relationships that are bringing you a lot of dysregulation. But that was confusing to me because I didn't know what to do to make things better, but I didn't know better, so I didn't know it even could be better. So I was like going off of nothing. And I've been reading a lot about the concept of pleasure, and then it led me into reading about erotic pleasure and stuff like that. But the reality is like pleasure is an all-encompassing idea of just joy. It's not just erotic, but there's a lot of stuff talking about erotic pleasure and the importance of experiencing like erotic pleasure. But again, like they're not really just talking about sex, like it's not just referencing sex, but more so just like very deep, internal, sort of profound, overwhelming experiences of joy, I would say. So one of the books that I was reading is called Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Maree Brown. It's called Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good. And this is how pleasure is defined in her book. She says, pleasure is a feeling of happy satisfaction or enjoyment, and to give sexual enjoyment or satisfaction to another. But the way that I'm talking about it right now when I talk about pleasure, I'm just going to be talking about a feeling of like happy satisfaction and enjoyment. And then she also describes what pleasure activism is, which I think is important to know. And this is how she defines it. Pleasure activism is the work we do to reclaim our whole, happy, and satisfiable selves from the impacts, delusions, and limitations of oppression and/or supremacy. Pleasure activism asserts that we all need and deserve pleasure, and that our social structures must reflect this. In this moment, we must prioritize the pleasure of those most impacted by oppression. It's a really great book. It's a collection of essays, and I would highly recommend it. I really like it, and you don't have to read cover to cover. You can just pick the essays that you want to read, but it's a really great book. And then I was really stuck on, in it, she also has the essay Uses of the Erotic by Audre Lorde. And again, like erotic is not solely defined by sexual pleasure, which I think is important because this is not about sex. So here's a way that in this essay, because I'll talk a little bit more about this essay and how I reacted to it. So this is how Audre Lorde defines the erotic. The erotic is a measure between the beginnings of our sense of self and the chaos of our strongest feelings. It is an internal sense of satisfaction to which, once we have experienced it, we now know we can aspire. For having experienced the fullness of this depth of feeling and recognizing its power in honor and self-respect, we can require no less of ourselves. So the reason that this sort of like was so profound to me, and just like reading this at the point in my life that I did, this isn't even the topic I was reading this for. This had nothing, me having this reaction didn't have to do with the actual topic that I was reading this for. But it was so profound to me because recently, for the first time in my life, like I've hit a point where I've spent so many years like very much dysregulated and disrupted in my life. I would say since childhood. I think it's pretty easy that if as a child you experience a lot of distress, pain, cruelty, trauma, whatever it is that throws off your body and your nervous system, and you're incredibly dysregulated and your life has been disrupted and your sense of self has been disrupted as you develop your identity. So then it kind of feels fractured and you don't really know who you are and you're trying to put it together, and there's nothing more disorienting than trying to put pieces of yourself together that you don't even really know yet because they didn't have time to develop. So it's just confusing. And so if as a child you were incredibly dysregulated and then you grow up into an adult, where the fuck is the reference point to know what it feels like to be regulated, to be at peace, to feel safe, to feel secure? Like, how do you even know what that feels like? And I think so many of us talk about the concept of when we've grown up in like homes that were on fire, kind of. It's kind of the idea, this is not the quote, but it's like, if you grow up in a house that's on fire, I think you'll always seek out a house that is on fire solely because it's the only house you recognize. Yes, it's familiar, but I don't even know if it's necessarily always about familiarity, but only about recognition. And I think that speaks to like when I was seeking out love that was painful and like required abandonment of myself and like immense self-distress and dysregulation because of the relationships I would find myself in, like an abusive relationship. I guess it was familiar, yes, right? But more than anything, it just was the only thing I could recognize as like love, as a definition for it. That's what it is. That's how I recognized it. I couldn't, if I saw a different relationship that like in my mind now, when I think and I know relationships, loving relationships in whatever relationship they are, no way in hell would I ever make that synonymous for what I once thought it was. I mean, God, it's a whole 180. But it's different now because I can recognize it. And that took years and years and years to get to a point where I can see something as synonymous with the idea of love, I would say, or peace and safety that before would have been its antithesis. And that was what I used to think love was chaos and turbulence and pain. And I've talked a lot about it recently. Like my videos have just like, I don't know, followed this, I think, train of thought because my life has been following this train of thought. But in my fanfic video, I talk about how I really did think love was something that was turbulent and chaotic and that it had to have that element. And part of it was the sort of fiction that I consumed, but it was just a contributor to my childhood and my environment that already was shaping that idea of like what love was. I told a therapist once when I was 19, 20 that I thought love had to be violent in order to be love. That was the only time I said it out loud. I admitted that out loud. Then I never said it again. And then I said it again for the first time in that video, fanfic video, because that's truly how I perceived it. But the problem is like that was therefore the only thing that I could recognize. I didn't have any other perception of it. It wasn't like I had grown up in a way that like I once had seen it and I knew what it was, and then I experienced something really traumatic or something incredibly painful and it sort of blurred it and made it difficult to see or to hold on to as much or to believe in. It was just not there at all. So I was like building from the ground up on ground that wasn't even solid to begin with. And as I have changed recently, I've developed like a sense of self-worth that I've never had before, ever. And I talk about that in a video on here. It's my thank you video. I've never really had self-worth, ever. Like, I mean, just in all honesty, none. I think none. It was just a fact to me. It was nothing other than a fact. It wasn't something that I was necessarily upset by or sad or even really trying to fix. I was trying to work around it because I couldn't, in my mind, I couldn't change this fact. But I can try and change, I don't know, manipulate my environment to make it okay and still have like a fulfilling, okay life and like find a way to give myself enough worth to be worth something, which often meant giving people everything, hence like foregoing boundaries because I just thought I was worth nothing. But I wasn't even really sad about it. It was just like an accepted fact. And I was like, okay, so I'm worth nothing. I move on. Like, same thing as like my eyes are hazel, my hair is brown. I have no self-worth. Let's go. Like, let's try something else. How do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix what? I don't know. Everything. Like, everything is wrong. How do I fix it? And a lot of it had to do with self-worth. But I think the reason so much of it had to do with self-worth is because without any sense of self-worth. I was always in a state of constant distress. Always in a state of constant distress because I was grasping at everything around me to make sense of myself and to make me existing have meaning and have it make sense. Because if not, you feel like so ungrounded all of the time. And that's kind of scary to be like floating in the air. You can't get your feet on the ground. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of imagining like if someone tied a bunch of balloons to you against your will and you're like floating, your feet are above the ground, it's like scary. It's not fun. You're not floating and like on cloud nine. You're just floating and can't get your feet on the ground and it's scary. You lose like your orientation and your sense of safety. If you don't have control, there's balloons above you. You can't control where you're going. That's kind of what it feels like. I always felt out of whack. And recently I've developed a sense of self-worth that I've just never had before. And that really truly has come from being a part of this community and being able to be a part of the community that has formed on here, on this channel in particular, and to get to experience you and other people and their experiences has held up a mirror for me and let me see reflection that gave me a sense of self-worth that I've never had. And it's because I could see yours so easily, so clearly that it helped me see mine. So I'm forever grateful, forever indebted, truly. It's changed my life so much. I can't even explain how much. But because I changed, so much of like how I've now existed in the world and the way that my body moves through the world as like I've changed mentally, intellectually, it started to ripple down and change physically. And that was interesting for me because I've always been someone who intellectualizes things. I don't really feel things. And I've been told before to go to things like somatic therapy and try things that are like physically grounding. And I would try. I tried yoga. I tried whatever. I tried all of this stuff. And I just did nothing because I couldn't feel my body. For a long time, it felt like my skin was really numb. That's kind of what it felt like. Like if you touched me, I didn't really feel anything. And if I moved my body, yes, I moved it, but it didn't like really feel like anything. I don't know how to explain it unless I think you've experienced it. It's like you're cognizant of your body and you're cognizant of what it's doing and that it's being touched or it's not being touched, but you don't really feel it. It doesn't really impact you. But something interesting happened as I started to feel a little bit better because of how I've changed through this, which was I wanted to take back something that was like taken away from me a really long time ago that was really traumatizing. The reason that I had to stop was really traumatizing. And that was playing a sport. It was, for me, it's playing volleyball. The reason I had to stop playing was really traumatizing. I have a Patreon. The videos are free over there, but if you're interested in why, it's the first video I posted of it. It was a really traumatizing reason, and I haven't touched like a volleyball since I was 17. I'm 25 now, and I didn't touch one for how many years that is. I've discalculated. I actually can't do that in my head right now. I didn't touch a volleyball, and I never really thought more about it other than that it was something I was going to put away. But the thing is, like, it was my whole life before. Like, I had to stop. It was my whole life. Like, it was everything to me. And as I started to get better, like through doing these, I thought, okay, I'm going to try and play again because, I don't know, I want to. And I tried once, and that was in the fall when I was starting to kind of like feel a little bit better. I went in the fall once. It was really fun. I had a lot of fun. And then I came home and I like sobbed and I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do it. And didn't go back until a couple months ago. Maybe almost like 2 months ago now. I went again and I had so much fun. And then I come home and then I would like freeze and be very sad. Like be very, very overwhelmingly sad in a way that I've never really experienced being sad because it felt really like physical. The only word I could use is somatic. Like it felt really physical. Like my body hurt in a way that it never did. The sadness like felt like it was, I know people will say like it hurts like down to your bones or like that's kind of what it felt like, but literally this time around like it didn't feel intellectual. But I kept going and I kept going because at that point I had realized that like I was an intellectualizing kind of person, which meant that the only kind of therapy that might work for me really is somatic. And so I was like, maybe this is a sign. So I kept going. And for a while, every time I went, I'd cry. I'd come home, I'd cry, I'd be really unwell, but I kept going. Like every day I was like, I'm going to keep going. I need to keep going because this was taken from me. And at the very least, like at this point in my life, I should take back everything that was taken from me. Whether or not I want to keep it in my life, at least I should take it back. And so I kept going. And I think that has completely rearranged my ability to feel in it, to feel something at all, and not just know something, but to feel it. And in the book, Pleasure Activism, she does talk quite a bit about somatics, especially in the beginning. And I'm just going to read how she defines it, because I think it's really important to talk about and a huge part of why I think this is important to explore, particularly pleasure and like physical manifestations of pleasure. But by that, I just mean joy and peace and safety. In the book Pleasure Activism, she describes it as somatics is a path, a methodology, a change theory by which we can embody transformation individually and collectively. Embodied transformation is foundational change that shows in our actions, ways of being, relating, and perceiving. It is transformation that sustains over time. Somatics pragmatically supports our values and actions becoming aligned. It helps us to develop depth and the capacity to feel ourselves, each other, and life around us. Somatics builds in us the ability to act from strategy and empathy and teaches us to be able to assess conditions and what is clearly. Somatics is a practicable theory of change that can move us toward individual, community, and collective liberation. Somatics works through the body, engaging us in our thinking, emotions, commitments, vision, and action. Okay. The reason that I think that that's so important is because I think there's different ways that we can become disconnected from ourselves and then struggle to actually ever actually feel like we can gain any control over our lives or make things make sense because we feel like we don't actually have a grip on ourselves. I think that's a lot of what intellectualization is, and being disconnected from your body is knowing something, being self-aware about it, but nothing really changes. And it's like from the outside, you can look like you have a pleasurable, peaceful, secure life. And then on the inside, feel incredibly insecure, unhappy, disoriented, nervous, scared. And I think that's the difference between performing pleasure, or really, like, if you want to make them kind of synonymous, peace. I'm really just talking about like an umbrella of like security, safety, warmth, compassion, softness, like understanding, pleasure and all that it is, joy, connection. And I think we can go through our lives making things make sense on our head, wanting to implement change, but nothing ever feeling that different. And I think a lot of my life has felt that way, where like I've known and I've known and I've known, and then I've not known and I've known and I've known and I've not known. But the one thing I didn't know how to do was to make it manifest. Like I could know all these things. It's kind of like, you know, the conundrum where you feel like you can give someone else really good advice and you know that you should take your own advice, but you can't. And even if you took your own advice, you don't feel it. So there's always a disconnect between your ability to know something and to live it. So in theory, to know it and embody it. And I think the reason that like I've clung so much to the concept of somatics and pleasure and even erotics, even because I'm not talking about erotics like sex, but it could be if that's one of the ways that you feel pleasure. The reason that I think as I've been doing this reading that I've clung so much to it is because for the first time, my connection to my body has changed. And I think it's allowed me to embody something that I've only ever thought my way through and tried to like replicate in the world intellectually, but never really feel. And so for me, I think the thing that like really changed that connection was playing volleyball. I think it's just like a form of somatic movement. I think that it's whatever the movement is. I know some people it's like yoga, but I kept going and I'd cry and I kept going. And then now I just enjoy it and I have so much fun, and it makes me feel something that I've not felt since I was a kid. It makes me feel like a person that I was pre-pain, and that goes really far back because like I said, I think as a kid, it doesn't take much for you to be dysregulated, be disrupted in your life, and then grow up and you never really find a way to unerupt it, like orient it again, and then you don't really have a reference point anymore. So I was really young when I think my life shifted that way, and then I ended up being quite a depressed kid. Like I think hitting age like 11, I got like very, very, very depressed, very evidently to like everyone just because of my life circumstances. And when I started playing again and I kept going and I kept sort of like pushing my body to continuously relive it, something snapped. I don't know. I really don't have a word for it other than like something snapped. And then I had this moment that like threw me off. This has never happened to me. You know how people will say you should stretch, it'll make you feel better, it'll like calm you down, or people will say when they do yoga, they'll like stretch and it makes them cry. I don't know. They feel a really intense bodily connection in that moment, a sense of physical release. And I think we all know that trauma is held in the body. There's that book. What is it? The Body Never Forgets. The Body Still Remembers. I don't remember, ironically. Our body holds memories. Our skin holds memories. Our muscles hold memories. We feel without even knowing. And we retain things that we don't even remember retaining. And for the first time, I started to feel this immense shift. Like my connection to my body shifted in a way that was like insane. Suddenly, like I felt connected to myself in a way that I never have, and like secure in my body in a way that I never had. Like I trust myself not to stumble and fall physically in a way that I haven't in a really long time. And I was at the gym and I was stretching because I had just worked out. I was stretching. And then this is crazy. Also in public, so a little weird. I started crying. I started crying at the fucking gym. Not loud. People didn't see this happen, I don't think. But I started crying. Like my eyes started to tear up when I was stretching, and I was like, wait, oh my God, what the fuck? I was like, this is what people have been talking about for years. Like, go to yoga, get a better mind-body connection. I had a friend the friend that told me, this is dark. I referenced this in the past few videos when I was like talking about how I had such a unhealthy view of love and like would forego all my boundaries to have it because I thought that was the right thing to do, and it led me to an abusive relationship, making me really vulnerable to one. Ended up in one, and I had a friend, and he told me, if you don't change, you're gonna die. He was trying to be he was being helpful. He was giving me a reality check about the way that I approach relationships and myself. He also told me that he's like, you're gonna have a really disconnected mind-body connection following this, like for a long time. He had said that. He's like, you should try yoga. He had told me that. And I tried. I tried after that relationship. I did a lot of really intense physical activity. Like I would work out for hours and hours and hours. Like my body was always bruised. I would try and feel things. I did dance at a dance studio that was nuts. Just crazy. If I saw pictures, I'd insert them of the bruises that I had. Like I was hypomanic at the time, so I could work out for 8 hours a day. Like I was so hard on myself physically, hoping to feel something, hoping to like tether my mind and my body, but I never had a tether, so I didn't even know what it felt like, at least not in my adult life. And so I would like be so hard on my body, and yet I felt nothing, and it always felt like my body was like kind of numb or sort of invincible in like the worst way ever. Like whenever I tried to get it to feel something, like I couldn't get it to feel anything. And so when I was at the gym and like I suddenly felt a physical release, that was crazy for me. That was so insane for me. That was like something that I've never felt. And then I felt really calm. And from what my therapist said, I think it's like a parasympathetic nervous system release or response, something like that. I don't really know the terminology, but she said it's a thing for people who do somatic therapy. And I felt so calm. I've never felt that calm in my life. You would think I'd like taken something, like some kind of sedative. I kind of felt like I had just taken like half of a Seroquel, maybe like 50 grams of Seroquel. That's the only time I felt like literally like a muscle relaxant before, was when I've taken Seroquel when I was like manic. That's the only time I felt that sort of like physical response. It was wild. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Anyways, all that to say, that was like a couple weeks ago. And since then, like I've consistently felt a connection to myself that I've never felt before physically. I've never felt connected to myself physically. And that has changed everything. Because not only has so much in my life changed mentally and even circumstantially, environmentally, like the relationships I'm seeking out, the relationships that I have, all this stuff. So much in my life has changed. But like I said, sometimes I still felt like I wasn't living it. And that moment, that like somatic connection, that somatic release, if you will, I've developed sort of a connection. And I think it goes back to like how that is described, somatics, and its embodied transformation. I think that's exactly what it was. I think like having a physical connection was my embodied experience, the transformation from like intellectual knowing of how to experience or how to experience change or want to change into feeling it in the moment and living it. And I think that's why the concept of erotic, like the term erotic and the experience of like eroticism, is so heavily linked in this like idea of pleasure, and not so much because it's just physical or that it's just sexual, but because it's so deeply embodied. I think the experience of feeling something erotic in any capacity is to be like very, very present in the moment and the experience of feeling. And in order to feel, you need to be present. To like feel something in its fullest capacity, like joy, needs to be present in the moment. And so suddenly, as I've developed that like connection to my body and like cried, because I've never felt that way before, I've never like felt connected to myself before. Since I've developed that, everything that I knew, suddenly I feel. And so suddenly life feels a lot less scary to navigate. And it's because I know now how it feels to, for example, be dysregulated, because for the first time ever in my life, I know the feeling of regulation. So like I could have used that word before and I could tell you what it meant and I could probably regurgitate like an understanding of it, but I've never felt it the same way that I'd never felt a healthy love. And so when I went to seek out a healthy love, I found another house on fire. It was the only one I recognized. And when I would seek out anything in my life, any state of being, any relationship, I could not tell you if it dysregulated me or disrupted my life. And that's because I already was dysregulated and my life had been disrupted. They weren't disrupting anything. Like the relationships I found that were dysregulating or disruptive to my life in detrimental ways. The problem is the reason that they came in and they came into my life so easily and I kind of was like, okay, yeah, like open arms, was because it was already disrupted. They weren't really disrupting anything. It was just taking advantage of the fact that I was a disrupted person and I was a dysregulated person. And so therefore, like I couldn't fight back because I didn't know that there was something else to fight for, which was my own peace and my own regulation. So if somebody was causing me distress and like unhappiness, I guess, really just like distress and disorientation, I wouldn't really know that it was any different than what my life should have been like because my life had really never been different. And there's different varying levels that somebody can disrupt your life and dysregulate you. Like, don't get me wrong. You know something's wrong, even if like you're already feeling like everything is wrong inside of you. You still know when something's going even more wrong. But the problem was my base level was feeling like everything that's wrong is probably right. I mean, everything feels kind of wrong, but I think that that's right. In reality, that's just like everything feels really dysregulating and confusing and disruptive, but I think that that's natural. I think that's the base level. I think that's what it is. And then maybe you work around that because you can't get out of that. That's kind of like how it was. It was my base level. And I think to even get to a point of like having the potential to have like a regulated base level experience of the world, I had to completely deconstruct my original and previous perception and experience of the world, which I think meant like a somatic sort of breakthrough or deconstruction to like actually embody the feeling of safety and security and change. Because my life can look really secure from the outside. I don't surround myself with people that are cruel to me. I keep very much to myself. I have a very, like, I would say regulated life for the most part. And I fought really hard to get here, like really hard, but it still didn't feel safe and it didn't really feel secure. It didn't really feel soft. It didn't really feel protected, I guess. I never really felt protected. I always felt exposed. And even getting to this point in my life where I feel like at this sense of peace and like sort of like an equilibrium, I still felt exposed. Like I needed something or someone to come in and shield it. But the reason I needed that, or I thought I needed that, is because I didn't think that I could do it. And I didn't think that I could do it because I thought I would miss it. And I thought I would miss it because I didn't trust myself, because I had never known what this felt like. And you need to know the opposite to be able to recognize its opposite. So I needed to know what being at peace felt like for me, being regulated, being at like a state of equilibrium, being happy, experiencing pleasure and the many different ways you can experience pleasure, being at peace, feeling safe and secure. I needed to know what that felt like. I didn't need to know what it meant or what it looked like. I needed to know what it felt like, because without that, I could not tell you what its opposite looked like. And that's because I only had ever known the opposite of dysregulation and unsafety and insecurity. So I always thought that I needed someone else to protect me from it because I wouldn't be able to see it and then it would affect me. I was always afraid of the future because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to protect myself in the future, no matter how much I learned now, in the face of like someone coming in that would want to hurt me again, like someone like my abusive ex. This used to be a really big fear of mine, that I would just sort of crumble in the face of her again. I used to have this fear, I used to have this nightmare for a really long time that I had lived in a completely new state, a new city, and I would see her on the street, and the second I saw her, it was like I would just fall down. That was the dream. I would literally just fall to the ground, and the point of it was that, this sounds weird, but it felt like the second I came face to face with somebody like that again, I was terrified that I would just sort of surrender to it because I wouldn't know how to stop it. And I've still always worried about that. I've always been on edge or hypervigilant to like, I got to this place, but how do I prevent it from like ever going back to what it was? I don't trust myself. I don't trust myself to prevent it. And I suppose the importance and why I think like this idea of pleasure activism and the experience of like fully embracing the erotic and what it means to feel pleasure and good is that because I know now, I truly, genuinely know what it feels like to be at peace physically, not just like intellectually, like physically know a sense of peace and happiness and security. I am no longer afraid of not being able to recognize the opposite or not being able to recognize the same. So I'm no longer afraid that I won't be able to protect myself from something coming in that could really harm me, like a person like my abusive ex, like a situation like that. Because now I recognize what it would look like for that to happen. And I recognize, or I'd be able to recognize when it's happening because it would actually genuinely disrupt me. It would actually, for the first time, cause a blip in my well-being in a way that is genuinely noticeable, and that would be dysregulation. Because I was already dysregulated when I met her. So like there was no blip, and then it's what made me so vulnerable to an abusive relationship. And it's what people like that thrive on. And now it would be incredibly disruptive to have someone like that come into my life because I have embodied something that I never thought I would, which is a feeling of peace. And because of that, for the first time ever, I feel safe and secure because I know that I can protect myself, at least to the best of my ability, for what is in my control, like the people that I choose to have relationships with. I can protect myself because I know what I am protecting. This is so much in like the stuff I was reading. Like one of the quotes from the Audre Lorde essay, Uses of the Erotic. This is like, I feel like really speaks to what I'm talking about. I'm just going to read it. This internal requirement towards excellence, which we learn from the erotic, must not be misconstrued as demanding the impossible from ourselves nor from others. Such a demand incapacitates everyone in the process. For the erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. And for me, there's so much of that can be applied to every single thing in your life, every single thing that you do. Now having a reference point, a measure for what is good for you solely because of what feels good for you. Like everything that is good for us, in most ways, I mean like drinking water, things, whatever. But the things that are good for us are subjective to us. And you need your subjective reference point. And so I think the exploration of joy and pleasure somatically, feeling it, not just knowing it, is your reference point. And like getting to that point where you can feel it and you can live it so that when something comes into it and disrupts it, you feel that disruption and then you can protect yourself from it, or at the very least, trust yourself to be able to recognize it, because it's not being able to recognize a threat that makes it so threatening. And that's the problem with like, if you've experienced pain or trauma or abuse in your childhood, that makes us so likely, unfortunately, to experience re-victimization later, because it's what we recognize and what we no longer recognize as a threat. And that's what makes it so threatening, extra threatening, because people who didn't experience that, it's easy for them to recognize because it's different than their life. It's a contrast. For us, it's not a contrast. That's the problem. And to speak about like relationships and love, I've always been scared of love and relationships at the same time that I've sought it out. I've been just as afraid of it as I have been in longing for it. I've always longed for love and relationships as much as I've been terrified of it. And there's a lot of reasons I was terrified, but a lot of it came from fear of not being able to make a self-protective judgment, that I would forego myself without even realizing it, that I would abandon myself without even realizing it because I didn't know how not to. I didn't even realize what I was or wasn't abandoning. That's the problem. Like, I didn't have any trust in my own judgment anymore. And that comes from not having experienced something that felt like could guide me, and that was a sense of internal safety and peace. So now I get it when people are like, you need internal security, suddenly means something so differently to me than it once did before. And it's solely because that sense of internal security and confidence in self-security, and more so like being able to protect yourself, comes from knowing what it feels like for you to be okay. And that's really hard to get to when you lived a life where everyone stole that from you. Like, maybe from the second you were born, that sense of being okay, what it meant, giving you like a base level for what it means for you to feel and be okay, that physical feeling, like that primal feeling that allows us to navigate the world intuitively and instinctively, is taken from you. Oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard to grow up and make sense of the world and make decisions that make sense to you or that protect you, or that aren't sort of always like disorienting you to make, because you have like no instincts. And the instincts that you do have keep landing you in situations that do hurt, and you know something's wrong because it hurts. But it's the only action that your body makes. Like, it's like, I can't even tell you why I made some of the decisions that I made. I can't tell you why when someone presented me with like really, 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 like my abusive ex-girlfriend presented me with really intense red flags, I froze. I couldn't tell you why that happened. I couldn't tell you why that was apparently the decision, theoretically, that I made, was to just freeze. It was instinct for me. That was it. That was my instinct. My instincts were totally mutilated. I can't tell you why I made those decisions, but all I can tell you is that they felt like no choice at that point. I don't know. I felt like I had no control over it. And that's because my instincts were just like fucked, honestly. My instincts were fucked. My emotional muscle memory, my sense of like guidance in the world. Like, I had no guidebook that made sense. I had no instincts that helped me make sense of my situations where I like could choose something that could potentially harm me and maybe the path that could potentially protect me. All the same to me, except this one I could recognize. The path that could harm me, I recognize that. And then I think without even realizing it, my body always geared that way because it was sort of implanted in me, that lack of instinct, or like that mutilation of instinct. That was all I had. And I think if you know that feeling, how frustrating it is to keep finding yourself ending up in situations that you know aren't good or that you shouldn't be in, and yet your body keeps ending up there. There's such a deep cognitive dissonance that I think unless you've experienced it, and why you should never say to someone who's been like in an abusive relationship, like, if you knew, why didn't you leave? Or if you like saw the red flags, why didn't you leave? I'm not saying that we shouldn't like hold ourselves to this responsibility or accountability, right? When it comes to like the decisions that we make. But the thing is, it's so important to keep in mind, like, what is leading to this sense of cognitive dissonance that they have? Because most likely, I would bet $1 million, it was something that they couldn't control, and it's impacting them in a way that makes them feel like they can't control it now. That's the problem. It's like when it's impacting you so deeply that it's become like an instinct. Instinct is really not controllable. It's like something you'd have to reprogram, rewire, develop different reflexes. And so it's important to ask someone like, not, well, why did you stay? It's more so like to ask, why is this where you feel okay? You know, why is being in the situation where like things feel okay? Me being with my abusive ex, why did that feel, I don't know, okay, I guess? Not great. Felt terrible, but why was that okay? Like, why did that feel okay for me? Like, why did that feel almost like right? It wasn't about like, why did you say or not say? If you knew, like, why didn't you do this? It was like, why did it feel like kind of all right for me to experience? to endure? Why was that stress like kind of okay for me? I would never wish that upon anyone else, but for me it was like, no, I think it's okay. Why is it okay for me to feel that much pain and distress every single day? Why is that my okay? Why is that my baseline? I think that that's a better question to ask. As like, why is their daily life, why is it okay for them in their daily life to feel that way? Because that's not fair. No one deserves to feel that way in their daily life. You do not deserve to feel incapacitated with dysregulation and fear and stress and heartbreak all the time, every day. That shouldn't be your baseline, everyday existence, life experience. But for example, when I was like seeking out relationships that were like dysregulating me, or I was in an abusive relationship, I was like, no, this is okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. But that was all I knew. So it had to be okay because I didn't have any comparison. There's actually another quote in the book Pleasure Activism that's about moderation that I think like represents this. And it says, moderation is key. The idea is not to be in a heady state of ecstasy all the time, but rather to learn how to sense when something is good for you. I think that that really is the point, is embracing and exploring your ideas of pleasure to the fullest extent and reaching inside of yourself as far as you can until you can like pull out a piece of you that it can tether to so that you feel it. I think that's why it's so important, is so that you know what feels good. You need to know what feels good so that you can know for sure when something feels bad, so that you can protect yourself from hopefully not ending up in situations where, for example, an abusive person takes advantage of you because they can sense that you don't really know that this is so bad, you know? And that only comes from knowing its opposite. Like, we only know what it's like to be really, really depressed because at some point or another, we have felt happy. You have to know its opposite. And the nice thing is, I guess, like, I feel like I felt so thankful, like an overwhelming sense of gratefulness, because for so long I've known sort of not what is good for me. So I've experienced a lot of what is not good for me, that it's made me like sort of incomparably thankful and happy to experience anything that feels good, because not only am I thankful in general to be in a position to feel anything that feels good, but to genuinely feel it and know that because I'm feeling what feels good now, I have a better chance of protecting myself in the future from things that would feel bad or would hurt me. And when I say that, I really I mean it so much in relation to love and relationships, and it all comes back to like having a sense of self-worth, or I don't know, self-security. Because the thing is, like, you know, people are like, you need to love yourself before someone else can love you, all this stuff. I think it's that you need to love yourself, whatever it is. Maybe it's love. We can use it as an umbrella term: respect, be loyal to, honor in some way, be compassionate towards, whatever the umbrella terms are for you under the term love, whatever. You need to love yourself before someone else can love you, but I don't think it's because you're unlovable or you can't handle like being loved. I think it's more so because you're not going to believe it, or potentially not even recognize it. It's kind of like how so many of us can, you know, we choose sometimes the people that are not great for us or hurt us because that's what we recognize. It could completely pass you by if somebody does treat you lovingly solely because you don't recognize it, because you don't feel it. And so I think your ability to recognize a love that is healthy and kind and that you are deserving of, you need to be able to feel it already. You have to be able to recognize it, and you can only recognize something that you really know. If not, you're always kind of like looking at something. That's like, if you don't actually feel it, it's kind of like holding up one of those drawings that are like sketch artists do when there's someone like on the loose that you're looking for. And it's like, okay, it kind of looks like them. This is what it's supposed to look like a kind, healthy love. You're like walking around town holding up this, trying to look at everyone around you being like, okay, wait, it kind of matches this, but you don't feel it. So you don't really know. And so you're just kind of trying to figure it out. And then your body might have some fucked up instincts like mine. So you can kind of like have an idea of what it looks like, but your body is like instinctively like almost like physically pulled towards other things. So then it just guides itself in the direction of people you don't really want, or like that will not make you feel great because you don't feel it. You don't feel it. It's hard to recognize and feel things that you don't actually feel. I mean, I guess it's less so about feeling it. Like, I guess what I mean is it's really hard to receive something that you don't know. Not only is it hard to find something true that you don't know, and that you don't actually feel or like feel like you embody because it's hard to recognize it. It's also like really hard to receive it because you don't really know what you're receiving. So like if somebody comes into your life and they're like, I love you, what do you want that to be like? Like what do you want to receive when somebody is offering you their love and whatever that means? I would like to think that it's probably like kindness, honesty, loyalty, warmth, strength, a form of anchoring. Like it shouldn't be a lifeline, like love. A loving relationship doesn't need to be a lifeline, but it should be some form of anchoring, a sense of grounding, a sense of peace with another person. I'm assuming that those are things you would want to receive in like a healthy relationship, to be loved by somebody. But if you don't feel any of that stuff, and you haven't felt any of that stuff, and you don't feel it in yourself already, they could throw you anything and tell you that that's what it is. That's the problem. Like you don't know the contrast, you don't know the opposite, and it's not enough to just know it. It's really hard to just know it and navigate the world in a way that implements it and like manifest that knowing without feeling it. And so I think for me, like the reason that this has been such a eye-opening experience for me, I guess like this particular change in me is the exploration of like somatic regulation and like bodily connection and the experience of like myself in terms of pleasure and what feels good and what doesn't feel good, is that I know now like what it is that I want to receive, and I know how to receive it because I know what it is. So for me, like I can accept softness from another person because I know how to be soft with myself, because for once I don't need to throw my body against every floor and wall possible, bruised to no end trying to feel something. Because I feel connected to myself. And so when I feel any kind of touch, emotional touch, physical touch, any kind of touch, I feel the pressure. And I know how to press softly in any way. Intellectually, emotionally, physically. My skin felt numb before. I couldn't accept softness because I didn't know what it was. And I will only choose someone, like for example, the next time I'm in a relationship, the next time I'm in love with someone, whatever it is, honestly, any relationship that I have in my life going forward, but for the sake of like, because I've talked so much about love and I've talked so much about my heartbreak and like abusive relationship, we'll talk about romantic love. But this goes for any relationship I have thus forward in my life. Because I now know a sense of internal peace and physical manifestations, embodiments of peace because of like this sort of change in myself, I will not accept anything else being brought into my life, and it would disrupt my life in a way that would be noticeable enough for me to no longer allow it into my life. And so I no longer worry about letting the wrong people in. And I also feel secure in my ability to make that decision, that whoever it is I do let into my life that way, who will then, because they're close to me, be able to have a large impact on me, on my ability to regulate, because relationships tend to go down, healthy ones, a path of learning to co-regulate. If someone is going to co-regulate with me and be a part of my regulation that I worked so damn hard for to be able to be a part of, I will be damned if I let someone in who's going to dysregulate it. But I know what it feels like to be regulated, so I will only accept somebody that matches that sense of regulation, nothing less. And because it's one of the things that I can control in my life, like the people and the relationships that I form and that I have, I will be damned. I just will not. It's one of the few things that I can control, who I choose to form a relationship with from this point going on in my life. There are so many things that we cannot control in our lives. So many things. We have enough things in our lives that cause us pain and dysregulation and disruption that we cannot control in so many ways, systemically, culturally, politically, all of these different ways that we cannot control. There's enough disruption in our lives. So I will never let something that I control be a reason to disrupt whatever peace it is that I'm able to maintain in my life. And you should not either. Life is disruptive enough. It's dysregulating enough. And you deserve, through your relationships, which are so important and valuable to have in this world, and like through community and through the relationships we form, the things that we can control, which is our relationships with each other, when we can't control the outside world, like the systemic oppression and discrimination and pain that all of us face collectively, those relationships should be your sort of binding force, to a sense of peace and clarity and okayness, security. It should be our relationships, because the world is insecure. Like, we cannot control the world around us. We cannot protect ourselves from what's happening politically and the pain and the tragedies that exist constantly, but we can control who we are in community with, if you want, or who we develop relationships with, or who we choose to have relationships with. And that's huge. And you should only say yes to ones that will make your life feel glued together in whatever way it can and keep you regulated in whatever way you can. There's another quote actually from pleasure activism that I think kind of speaks to this. It says, "Your no makes way for your yes. Boundaries create the container within which your yes is authentic. Being able to say no makes yes a choice." I think that speaks a lot to the point of what you can control. Take advantage of that control. Utilize it. There's also another quote in here. It says so in pleasure activism, it's a collection of essays, and one of the essays is called "The Sweetness of Salt" by Alexis Pauline Gumbs, I think is how I say it. There's a line that says, in her essay on the issue of roles, Tony Cade explains that if we want to have a revolution, we have to craft revolutionary relationships in action, not simply in rhetoric. That's an incredibly, I think, revolutionary statement, and also speaks so much to the importance of community and in action, in change, and movement on such a broader level. But to take it down to like a very micro level, and just like our personal everyday, like little interactions, like your interpersonal relationships, it's so important that those are the relationships you start with, that like you start saying yes to the ones that protect you and like contribute to the protection of your peace that you have worked so hard to form, or you are working so hard to form in a world that like is working so hard to disrupt it already. The world that we live in works hard to disrupt your peace and everyone's peace in every way. And so taking control back that you have in terms of like who you choose to let into your world, your own interpersonal world, is so important, I think. I don't know. All of this to say, I think, is just that for the first time ever, I feel a sense of self-security that I've never felt before. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I feel more in control of myself than ever. And it's because I feel more connected to myself than ever physically. I feel more embodied in the things that I know than I ever physically have. And it's a wall that I've never been able to break through. It's been the thing I've tried with every single therapist, like them saying like, you're intellectualizing this. What do you feel? What do you feel? I couldn't answer. I stopped. Like, it would used to really piss me off because I'm like, I don't know what you want from me. And it feels like after my whole life being something that was like sort of a form of intellectualization, it feels real. Like, it feels like I finally exhaled everything that I knew and I can now live it. At least the things that I knew that I always wished so badly I could also embody and live. And so I'm less afraid. This is my cat. His name's Teeny Ween. But because of that, I'm less afraid. I'm less afraid than I have ever been. And that's huge. If you've like been someone who grew up like from a really young age, afraid and in a state of fight or flight, you're always scared, even if you don't realize you're scared. And now that I felt some peace, I'm like, damn, I was scared. That's the only word I would describe my everyday life. Like, sort of like walking fear, like hypervigilance. And that's what happens, I think, when you're traumatized or have things like PTSDs, constant hypervigilance. I'm very aware now for the first time that was a state of hypervigilance. And so it's just nice. And I no longer am afraid of forming relationships or romantic relationships that obviously I've had a lot of trauma related to. And that's a big deal because that used to be something I was afraid of. And now I'm like, I'm not afraid anymore because I know the things that I want to receive, no longer just like, well, I think that's what a relationship should be. Like, I know what it should be for me, like what it would consist of, and I know how to receive it because I know what the opposite is, and so therefore I won't receive the opposite. I won't allow it. That's the control that I have, and that is things like kindness and softness and gentleness and understanding and loyalty and devotion in ways that are healthy. And I think that love will feel like an anchor and no longer a lifeline. And I think that that's a really big deal because when something is a lifeline, you're sort of always scrambling, freaking out, trying to grab it. Your whole world is sort of falling apart around you if you need to reach for a lifeline. And romantic love no longer feels that way. I talk about how I used to think it was like a salvation in my fanfic video. It doesn't feel that way anymore. It doesn't feel like a lifeline. It doesn't feel like a form of salvation. But it does, I think, now feel like something that could be an anchor. The way that like friends and people that I love in my life now are anchors. If I need someone to help ground me, I call them. And so to have like a romantic partner, somebody that I love romantically and let into my world that intimately, they will not be a lifeline, not the same way, but they have to be an anchor. And I would have never experienced that before solely because I couldn't conceptualize that experience because I didn't know what it felt like to be grounded or anchored really in myself. So now that I know what it feels like, I'll know if somebody is tying a bunch of balloons to me and taking my feet off the ground in the worst way. So I know what an anchor feels like, and I'll be able to recognize if someone else can be that for me as well, and if I can be that for them. And I think in relationships, hopefully it's two people who can recognize each other in those ways. Like the equal, reciprocal act of being the other's anchor without the pressure of having to be a lifeline, you know? That's what I think love and your relationships and all relationships, love, I think it should feel like a homecoming. I think it should feel like a place where your past and your present and your future can rest safely in the hands of another person. And I think that that's what a healthy, loving relationship is like feeling safe enough with someone that who you are and all that you are is safe. And knowing that it's safe because you know what it feels like to feel unsafe because now you know safety. So you know how to receive it from someone else because you know it. So you have to know the opposite, but you have to know the contrast now. You have to know the opposite of that opposite. You have to know what safety feels like. They can't hand it to you. That's really scary to let someone hand you something and tell you what it is. You have to know what it feels like or you're really vulnerable. So if you know what safety is, I think you can find those people who can, you trust, like hold your past, present, and future in their hands and not be terrified the way that like we do for the people that we love. We accept them for all that they are, and we love them, you know? And we have the discernment to choose people that what we are accepting are things that like are not going to harm us, you know, or be like threatening, or cruel or dangerous for us to hold. So when you have, I think, that discernment, you can find other hands that will hold you the same way that you have for others, you know? I think that's a lot of what it was. And then I guess if it's like romantic love, finding someone who can be your anchor, who can like be the hands that also hold your past, present, and future in it, and trusting that you're picking the right hands so that you don't go into it always worried and afraid because you're not afraid of yourself and you're not afraid of your decision making. I think because you feel safe in yourself. I don't know. I think that that's kind of what I've been thinking about. Oh my God, I'll see it on my camera again. This is so long. I didn't mean it to be this long. I keep accidentally making these too long. Anyways, I don't know. I wanted to talk about this. I was reading a bunch of stuff about pleasure and somatics and actually, like before this, I was reading about self-insert characters and fan fiction and like a really dark side of that related to consent because I was studying for a different video and then I'm studying for a different video and then I'm like, oh my God, wait, I relate to that right now. And then I ended up making these, but I'm studying for other videos when this happened. So that's the stuff I was reading. I was reading about self-insert characters a couple hours ago at a cafe when this like dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, like this is why the knowing of pleasure means so much in terms of the knowing of how to protect yourself and the experience of self-security, the embodiment of safety and peace. And that comes from deeply, deeply experiencing yourself, especially somatically if you're an intellectualizing individual like myself. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts. My life has changed a lot. And it's changed me with it in ways that I'm so grateful for that I just truly have never thought I could be changed because I didn't know there was a change like this. I didn't know there was an other side to what my life had always felt like until I was on the other side of it. And I'm like going on the other side of it. And so it's insane. And it's a result of healing that I could have never, ever done if it wasn't for you and for the community that has formed within this channel. This was not a result of just me. This was a result of this community. I've tried my whole life. I've tried for years and years and years to get to this point, and I never could. And it was this relationship that got me here. So, like I said, I'm ever indebted, truly. And I say it at the end of every video recently, but I just have to, because it's changed me in a way that I'll never forget. So thank you. If you're someone who's been a part of the community on here in any way, shape, or form, I truly owe you everything. Any sense of self-security and peace that I have formed has been because of you. So, or it was like the catalyst. So it really is in a lot of ways because of you, because I needed the catalyst. So thank you so much. And if there's any way to send that to someone else, like telepathically, a sense of safety and hope and self-security, love, whatever that means, in somebody else's presence, to feel cared for in whatever way, or respected or honored, I hope that I can send you that. Even if it's just virtually, I hope that you can feel that. And I hope that no matter what is happening in your life currently, or has happened, or that does happen, that you experience and you find peace and self-security and a sense of self-trust that allows you to feel safe. Because more than anything, our safety means everything when it comes to our experience of the world. And there's so much in the world that already is out of our control that makes us feel unsafe. So I hope that within your life, your daily life, the things that you can control, you begin to feel safe in those actions and the decisions that you make, and your ability to trust yourself. I hope that you can begin to feel a sense of safety in the way that you move through the world as much as you can. And even if that doesn't necessarily mean yet feeling happy or like joyous, or you're still struggling with other things happening, maybe out of your control, I still hope that no matter what, you can feel a sense of grounding. I feel like more than anything, just feeling a sense of the ground beneath your feet can mean everything in a world where the state of the world is so disruptive and disoriented. And if you've had a life that's really disruptive, I just wish you nothing but safety and happiness. And I think peaceful and loving experiences and relationships and friendships and whatever they are will follow. But I just hope that you can feel safe in yourself, and then in the world around you, and in the relationships that you form, and trusting your judgment, and get to experience the peace that comes with self-trust. I am wishing you all of that in every way possible. And I also know that you'll experience it. I have no doubt, actually, I have zero doubt in my mind that you will find that sense of safety and happiness, and it will lead to a life that is loving in whatever way a loving life looks for you. However that culminates, at the end of your life, at the end of your existence, it will culminate in a loving way. And I hope that you are able to begin embodying that feeling of a life that feels safe and loving in whatever way loving, or whatever loving means to you. I hope that you get to begin to embody that the way that you deserve, because that truly is a birthright. That's not something you have to earn. The embodiment of a safe and peaceful and loving life is your birthright. It's not something you have to work so hard to earn. And I hope you can feel safe in that fact. And then I think hopefully feel safe enough to live like that is true, because it is. So that's it, I guess. My camera's gonna die. I can see the thing blinking. So I'll end it here because this is way too long. And just say thank you for watching, for listening to me ramble about the things that I've been learning and how it's changed me, and for thanking you once again for changing me. I'm very grateful. And I'll be having more videos come up, the videos that are actually the ones I'm studying for when these thoughts come into my head. But in the meantime, I wanted to share this because it's taken a lot to get where I am, and it sort of blows my mind every day living a life that finally feels different in a way that I never thought I'd be lucky enough to experience. So I thought I would share it with you. And yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's it. If you have anything that you want to share, please feel free to share it in the comments. I would love to hear your experience. I know others would love to hear your experience. It's not only welcome, but wanted. Whatever it is, whatever you feel comfortable to share. I moderate the comments so no one will be terrible. And if it's something you don't feel comfortable sharing for others to see, you can send it to me directly. I'd be honored to hear it and to be in your audience. I have a submissions page. I can upload it there as well. People have submissions. I also have another YouTube channel with video submissions. There's a video up there if you want to share something for others to see, but you'd rather do it through video or audio form. I'd love to see it, and I'm sure others would as well. And it can be related to literally anything. And what else? I also have a Patreon. The videos are free over there. There's 2. They're more mature content. Mature content's not the word. Mature themes, like related to like sex and comped and trauma and things like that. So if you're interested, that's over there. And okay, yeah. I think that's it. My camera's genuinely gonna die because I'm talking too much. So thank you so much for watching. And I'm wishing you all the peace and happiness and self-security and feelings of warmth and safety and self-protection that there is. And I will see you in the next video. Okay. Bye.